Okay, so here's something that used to drive me absolutely insane until I finally understood what was happening. You know that person in your life who suddenly becomes completely incompetent the second there's work to be done. They can't figure out the simplest task. They don't understand basic instructions. They need everything explained to them 5 times. But then, the moment it benefits them, suddenly they're a genius. Suddenly they know exactly how to navigate the most complicated systems. Suddenly their confusion disappears. And you're left standing there thinking, wait a second, are they actually this clueless or are they playing me? Here's the answer: they're playing you, and they're really good at it. Because what you're dealing with isn't stupidity, it's one of the most effective manipulation tactics that exists. Psychologists call it strategic incompetence or weaponized helplessness. And once you see it, you'll realize this person has been running this playbook on you for months, or maybe even years. The crazy part? Most people who do this don't even fully realize they're doing it. It started as a survival mechanism or a way to avoid responsibility, and over time, it became their default strategy for getting what they want. But whether it's conscious or not, the result is the same. You end up doing their work, carrying their weight, and questioning your own perception of reality. But if you're watching this video right now, I'm guessing you're starting to see the pattern. You're what psychologists call hyper aware. You've been burned enough times that your brain is finally connecting the dots. And that's not you being paranoid, that's you being smart. So let me show you the 5 signs someone is playing dumb to manipulate you. Because once you recognize this tactic, you'll never fall for it again. Sign number 1, and this is the biggest tell: selective incompetence. They can't do tasks that benefit you, but they're an expert at tasks that benefit them. This is the clearest sign that someone is faking helplessness, because real incompetence is consistent. If someone genuinely doesn't understand technology, they don't understand it across the board. But strategic incompetence, it has very convenient boundaries. They can't figure out how to use the scheduling software when it's time to take on extra shifts, but they can navigate the most complicated apps when they want to order food or book a vacation. They don't know how to do basic tasks at work that would help the team, but they know exactly how to work the system to get time off or avoid the jobs nobody wants. I had a roommate who pulled this so effectively that I didn't catch it for almost a year. He claimed he didn't know how to do laundry, like genuinely convinced me he'd never learned, so I'd end up doing his laundry because I felt bad. He said he didn't understand how to clean properly, so I'd clean the apartment. He acted completely confused by how to cook anything, so I'd make dinner and he'd just show up to eat. But here's the thing: this same person who couldn't figure out a washing machine somehow knew how to torrent movies, set up a VPN, configure his gaming PC, and navigate incredibly complicated software for his hobbies. What? Yeah. The second I pointed this out to him, he got defensive, started saying, well, that's different. That's something I'm interested in. But it's not different, it's selective. And that selectiveness is the manipulation. Here's what researchers at the University of Michigan found: people engage in strategic incompetence when the cost of learning a task is higher than the social cost of pretending they can't do it. In other words, if they think you'll just do it for them, they'll play dumb. And the more you enable it, the more they'll lean into it. Because why would they learn to do something uncomfortable when they can just convince you they're incapable? Sign number 2: strategic confusion. They suddenly don't understand things when you try to hold them accountable. This one is so insidious because it makes you feel like you're the problem. You bring up something they did that hurt you, or broke a promise, or violated a boundary, and instead of acknowledging it, they act confused. They say, I don't understand what you're talking about, or I don't see how that's a problem, or I don't get why you're upset. And you end up spending the entire conversation trying to explain yourself instead of them taking responsibility. That's not confusion, that's deflection disguised as incompetence. I watched someone do this to a friend of mine for years. Every time my friend tried to address something this person had done wrong, they'd play dumb. They'd act like they didn't understand why it was hurtful. They'd make my friend explain the most basic concepts of respect and boundaries over and over. And my friend would get so exhausted trying to make them understand that she'd just give up. And that was the point. The The confusion wasn't real. It was a tactic to avoid accountability. Because if you're too tired to keep explaining, they never have to change. Psychologists call this cognitive offloading. It's when someone deliberately shifts the mental burden onto you so they don't have to deal with it. And strategic confusion is one of the most common ways people do it. They make you work so hard to be understood that you stop trying to hold them accountable. It's manipulation through exhaustion. Sign number 3: weaponized helplessness. They force other people to do their work by pretending they can't do it themselves. This is the most frustrating one because it turns you into their personal assistant without you even realizing it. They act so helpless, so incapable, so overwhelmed that you just step in and do it for them. And the more you do it, the more helpless they become. Because they've learned that helplessness gets them out of work. I had a coworker who was a master at this. Anytime there was a task that required effort, or that nobody wanted to do, she'd suddenly become completely overwhelmed. She'd say things like, "I don't even know where to start with this," or "This is so confusing, I'm going to mess it up." And at first, I thought she genuinely needed help, so I'd walk her through it. But then I noticed a pattern. The tasks she claimed were too hard were only the tasks she didn't want to do. The second there was something she wanted, like organizing the office party or planning a team outing, she was suddenly incredibly capable. She didn't need any help. She knew exactly what to do. But when it came to actual work, helpless. Here's what's happening psychologically. Research on learned helplessness shows that people can condition themselves and others to believe they're incapable. And once that belief is established, they get to avoid effort while someone else picks up the slack. You become their solution, and they never have to grow or take responsibility because you keep saving them. Sign number 4: convenient memory loss. They forget promises they made, but they remember every favor you owe them. This one makes you feel like you're going crazy. You'll bring up something they agreed to do, and they'll look at you with complete sincerity and say, "I don't remember saying that." But the second you owe them something, their memory is crystal clear. They remember every detail, every commitment you made, every time you said you'd help them. Their memory is incredibly selective, and that selectiveness is strategic. I had someone in my life who did this constantly. They'd make plans with me, and then when the day came, they'd act like they had no idea we had plans. They'd forget conversations where they promised to help me with something. They'd forget boundaries I'd set. But if I ever forgot something I'd promised them, suddenly their memory was photographic. They'd remember the exact date, the exact words, the exact context. And I started to feel like I was losing my mind. Did I imagine those conversations? Did I make up those promises? But I didn't. They just had selective amnesia that only kicked in when it benefited them. Psychologists call this motivated forgetting. It's when your brain conveniently forgets information that would require you to do something you don't want to do. And while everyone does this to some degree, strategic manipulators weaponize it. They train you to stop holding them accountable because you can never prove they agreed to anything. And that's exactly where they want you. Sign number 5: the underestimation game. They pretend not to understand things, so you underestimate them and give them information or access you normally wouldn't. This is the most calculated form of playing dumb. They're not just avoiding work or accountability, they're actively gathering intelligence. They act clueless, so you let your guard down. You explain things you normally wouldn't explain. You share information you'd normally protect. You underestimate their ability to use what you're giving them. And then later, you realize they understood the whole time. They were just playing a role to get what they wanted. I saw this happen with someone who was new to a workplace. They acted like they didn't understand office politics. They played dumb about how things worked, so people would talk freely around them, assuming this person was too naive to understand or too harmless to matter. But this person was paying attention to everything, every piece of gossip, every complaint, every vulnerability people shared, and within a few months, they'd used all that information to position themselves perfectly. They played alliances. They leveraged secrets. They weren't dumb. They were strategic. And everyone who underestimated them got played. Research on strategic self-presentation shows that people often downplay their intelligence or competence to gain trust or access. It's the psychological equivalent of a Trojan horse. They seem harmless, so you let them in. And by the time you realize what's happening, they've already gotten what they needed. Now, here's what you need to understand about all five of these tactics. They work because good people assume the best. You see someone struggling, and your instinct is to help. You see someone confused, and you want to explain. You see someone who seems overwhelmed, and you step in. That's not a flaw, that's empathy. But manipulators know how to exploit empathy. They've learned that if they act helpless enough, someone will save them. If they act confused enough, someone will stop pushing. If they play dumb enough, they can avoid consequences. And the more you help, the more they'll lean on you. Here's your reframe. You're not mean for recognizing this pattern. You're awake. There's this idea that good people always give the benefit of the doubt. But research on manipulation shows that people who ignore red flags end up being used the most. Spotting strategic incompetence isn't you being judgmental, it's you protecting yourself. You're not cold for seeing it, you're conscious. And that's not a flaw, that's growth. So, what do you do when you spot this? You stop enabling it. And this is the hard part, because these people have trained you to be their solution. The first time you don't step in to save them, they're going to escalate. They'll act more helpless, more confused, more overwhelmed. This is what psychologists call an extinction burst. It's a last ditch effort to get you back into your old pattern. But if you hold firm, something shifts. They either figure it out on their own, or they move on to someone else who will play their game. Either way, you're free. Here's the test. Next time they claim they can't do something, say, okay, and walk away. Don't explain. Don't teach. Don't rescue. Just let them sit with it. If they're genuinely incompetent, they'll struggle, but they'll try. If they're strategically incompetent, they'll suddenly figure it out the second they realize you're not helping. Or they'll find someone else to manipulate. And that tells you everything you need to know. But here's what nobody tells you about standing firm. You're going to feel guilty. You've been conditioned to believe that helping people who seem helpless is kindness. But enabling someone's manipulation isn't kindness, it's self-sacrifice. And you're allowed to stop sacrificing yourself for people who are playing you. You're allowed to let people struggle with things they're perfectly capable of doing. You're allowed to hold people accountable, even when they act confused. You don't owe anyone your labor just because they've convinced you they're incapable. That's your permission slip. Here at Selective, we don't just talk about psychology. We make it make sense. If this video helped you see someone's game, hit subscribe, because next week we're breaking down why smart people do incredibly stupid things and how it makes them easy to manipulate. Your future self, the one who stopped being everyone's solution, is already thanking you for watching this. You're not responsible for fixing people who refuse to help themselves. And recognizing that, that's freedom. You've got this.